My name is Jay Acovone. I'm 54 years old, and I'm an actor.
All right, Jay, thanks for taking the time, man.
No problem, Cheto. Thank you. Thank you for making the time. Okay.
So let's give them a little bit of background how we met. Do you mind giving a first impression of me when you first met me?
No, I mean, well, I met you through a mutual friend, through Mike, Mike Stone, and Michael's into poetry and what do they call it?
Spoken word.
word. He's into spoken word, and of course I'm friends with his entire family, and that's how I met you, and we just started talking, and you told me that you were very interested in why. Well, first you told me you had a lot of scripts that you had been writing and things like that, and then you told me you were very interested in why all of the work, all of the show business work, is leaving the state of California and going elsewhere.
Right, which brings us here.
So
Right.
I guess we're here to talk about that, and I'll answer these questions as best I can. I mean,
Well, I appreciate it. Tell me, when you first decided to become an actor and decided, you always didn't live in Hollywood, right?
no, I'm originally from New York. I was born in New York City, and then I was raised about 50 miles outside of New York City.
Were you an actor in New York?
Yes, I was.
How long
Yeah.
did you do that?
Well, I have a high school education, and then I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts for 2 years, and then I went to the Lee Strasberg Theater Institute for 1 year.
Okay.
And then I started going out on auditions and things, and doing plays and what have you. And then I got lucky, and I call it get lucky because it's when I first got my break and when I first got into the union, into the Screen Actors Guild union. And Lou DiGiamo was the casting director, and William Friedkin was the director. And I went in and met on a movie called Cruising, starring Al Pacino, and I ended up in that. And I had I don't know whether you'd call it a co-starring role, but certainly a really nice featured role.
So one of your first major deals was with Al Pacino.
Correct.
Wow, that's awesome. So was that filmed in New York as well?
That was filmed in New York. We filmed it downtown, in the Meat District, and in Christopher Street, Greenwich Village, like that. Yeah.
Very cool. So now Al back then was he a nice guy? Did he talk to you? Did
He was great. He was great. I mean, there's a story that goes along with that. Just that, years before, I was at the Baldwin Place Shopping Center when I was a kid. Now, the town I grew up in was called Mahopac or Mahopac, New York. And it's, as I said, about 50 miles north of New York City. And I was with a friend of mine, Rick Leonard, and we were in a movie theater in Baldwin Place Shopping Center, and we were watching a movie called Dog Day Afternoon.
Oh, yeah,
This was in '73, I think.
One of Pacino's other.
Yeah, and I remember saying to my friend after the movie was over, I remember saying to my buddy, I think I could do this. I'd like to do this. And of course my friend said, what, rob banks? And I said, no, I mean, I think I could do what this guy is doing on the screen. And of course I loved Pacino, anything he did. And I'd watch that guy read the phone book, and it was 6 years later I was working with him.
Wow.
So,
So
America, baby.
Affirmation. Yeah. Well, that's cool, man. So now you were in New York, you're doing your acting. When did you decide to go ahead and make the step to LA?
In '85, the opportunity presented itself in '85, and what happened was I was with one of the larger agencies when I was. After I did Cruising, I did like another 1 or 2 films. I did a movie in Boston, and then I did a small part in a movie called Times Square for Robert Stigwood. and then I ended up on soap operas. I started on a 2-year contract with Search for Tomorrow, and then I went to As the World Turns for 2 years, and then you know, the large agency that I was, well, I might as well just say I was with the William Morris agency back then, and they were asking me to come here.
So
And I just said, look, I really, you know, my family is here, my life is here. I really don't want to move to California and wait online when I'm waiting online here. You know what I mean? So let me wait online here in New York, and you know, if you get me a job in California, I'll move to California. Well, be careful what you wish for. So what happened was I was flown out here, and I tested for a television series called Hollywood Beat for for Aaron Spelling. And I ended up getting it, and Jack Scalia was my co-star, and I came out, and I never left, and that was in '85.
So now that was in '85. I'm sure at that point you're doing soap operas, and things are starting to pick up for you. Were you still auditioning, or were they starting to call you?
No, most of the work that I've gotten in my life was through auditions. I mean, not all of it. I mean, certainly there were offers, and I took some and turned down others, but. Most of the time it was, you know, go through the whole dog and pony show where you go in and you read and you get called back and you read again and then you get the role.
So tell me about that. Okay, you've already been 4 years on television. You've done an Al Pacino film, and now you're going in and auditioning with some Yahoo who just moved into California.
Well, I'm not sure I understand your question when you say that.
You got some guy who's on the CAA's list as the new kid in town, trying to get your same role. You know. But,
yeah. Well, I mean, look, the competition was always fierce, and I was never afraid of competition. So you know, you just go in there, you just go into a room with your guns loaded, and you get prepared, and you know what you're doing, and you just unload on them, and that's it. And then if luck is with you, then you get the role, and if not, then you don't. And you know, I have the scars on my back to prove it. They said no a lot to me, so but I worked a lot as well, so I have a lot to be grateful for.
That's great. Now, when you what was one of your first more memorable roles as like a moment that you would ever want to forget? Let's go there. What's a moment you would never forget?
Well, there's been many, but as far as getting a role, well, I remember back in probably toward the end of the '80s, Stephen Bochco in television. Stephen Bochco was the guy to work for. I mean, because he had Hill Street Blues, he had a lot of shows on the air, and I remember going in to read for NYPD Blue for probably the 5th time, and I hadn't gotten anything to that point. And I finished my reading, and they said, "Hey, great, thank you very much for coming in." And I was just about to. I had my hand literally on the doorknob, and I turned around and I looked at all, 4, 5, 6 producers, and I looked at them and I said, you know, I'm just going to keep coming back. There's no way that I'm going away.
Right.
I mean, I'm going to work on this show. And it just so happens that was it. That was the role that I got. I really enjoyed that. I worked with Jimmy Smits on NYPD Blue, and I had a great time.
That's awesome.
So I mean, there's been a lot of stories like that, but you know.
Now you've done NYPD Blue, you've done Beauty and the Beast, you've done Stargate. Now you get a lot of fans from these like Stargates, Beauty and the Beast, NYPD Blue.
Yeah, I've done a few of the conventions and things, these sci-fi conventions.
What's that like? These guys stand in line to?
Oh, it's fun. It's a lot of fun, but you know they do dress up in the costumes that they wear in sci-fi and things like that. So it's interesting.
When do you feel things start cooling down? Like when?
Probably. See, this is 2010. Probably 2003.
So
things really cooled down.
About 7 years ago.
It was not a good year for me. It was the year of my. That was the year of pretty much the downslide of my career and my marriage and everything. So 2003, I'd like to forget about, really.
So that would be a good time to forget about.
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean, whatever. I mean, I'll talk about it, but there's not much to talk about. It was just one of those things where you feel like you're underwater.
Were you still doing auditions and?
Oh sure. Oh yeah, I was doing auditions, but nothing. I wasn't landing anything, and it was a bleak time.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you had an agent in 2003 still?
Correct. Yeah, I still have an agent today. Yeah.
Now, when they go from calling you for auditions to you calling them for work, what does that? I mean, where do you decide? You know.
Well, it's character building. That's for sure. You know, things change. You know, I went from, you know, having one of the biggest agents in town,
Right.
to you know, on down the ladder. You know, and now I'm literally calling people for work myself, not being,
Exactly.
you know, I mean, I'm being represented, but you know, now a guy my age, you really have to pull out all of your stops and call all of your old contacts and try to drum up work yourself now.
Well, that's what a lot of this movie's about is, you know, networking, and, you know, the people that you used to know who, you know, used to call you and aren't, you know, just aren't calling anymore, or anymore, or out of the business, or.
I think a lot of people are out of the business now. A lot of people, you know, they have problems of their own, and they have families of their own, and they have, you know, their time is their own, and you know, you just lose touch.
Right.
You know, one of the most naive things, excuse me, one of the most naive things that I had in my head, that when it was very early on and I was still a kid, and I had done the movie Cruising, and I had done other television shows, was that when I was on the set, I thought, wow, I'm friends with all of these people, and we're going to be friends for the rest of our lives.
Right.
Yeah, well, no. It's not the way it works. You know, it just, you finish the job and you move on.
Right.
And I learned that as time went on.
So
And
it's not about who you know anymore, would you say?
I don't think so. I don't know. I never really got a lot of jobs through nepotism. I never really did. I had to go in and
Work hard for it.
earn the jobs that I got. You know, they sent me the script, and I read the script, and then I'd go in and prepare the material, and just go in
Old
and
school actor, yeah. Just
do
it.
the best thing I could, and a lot of times I got jobs.
That's
You
cool.
know, so.
What do you think about, like, Hollywood bringing in reality shows and then sending their productions out to Canada and Mexico?
Well, you know, look, I'm not a great big fan of reality shows, so it wouldn't be coming from an unbiased opinion. But you know, I think there's a difference between reality shows and contestant shows.
Right.
You know, American Idol, I don't mind. Dancing with the Stars, I don't mind, because they're contestant shows. So, you know, and you have to have a certain amount of talent. You have to have a lot of talent,
Right.
to be on some of these shows. But to put 7 or 8 people in a house that don't like each other very much, and let's put the cameras on and see what happens, that to me is not, that's not entertainment.
And these guys, they're pulling $50,000 to show up at a nightclub now. You know, Heidi and Spencer made a living off of.
Oh well,
You know, so.
you know, if you can make a living doing anything right now, I think more power to you.
Well,
So.
that's what you know, just, you know, guys like you who actually have a fan base, you wouldn't be invited to a nightclub. You know what I'm saying? And these guys are getting paid $50,000 to
There-
show up. You know, it's kind of ridiculous. What
There you go.
But
You know, I'm old school in the way that I really prefer scripted television. I really prefer scripted movies. You know, and that's not to say that I don't like you know, ad-libbing and paraphrasing and what's the word I'm looking for? Improv. I mean, I love improv because a lot of good things come out of improv, but I prefer scripted.
Yeah.
You know, where, you know, you have a producer and you have a writer and you have a director and you have actors and everybody gets together and you rehearse and good things happen. I'm old school that way.
all right, so now Jay,
Yeah.
you've been through 2 or 3 SAG writer strikes now. What?
Between SAG and Writers Guild, I think I've been through 3 or 4 over the years. I've been a member of SAG since '79, so yeah, it's been 3 or 4 probably.
Right now, what do you see, like, now back in the day they would crank out a script in two weeks before the deal and set it off, and now this seems like this last one, there was a lot of, like, writing going on, a lot of it was like out of the hands of a lot of people. It seemed more or less.
It always is.
Right.
It always is out of the hands of a lot of people. But
Now this one, supposedly they haven't actually signed an agreement, but they're still working. Do you know anything about that?
I really don't know enough about it to comment, and I'm kind of ashamed of myself to sit here and tell you that I'm a SAG member and I really don't know much about what's going on. And I'd like to think I'm a minority, but I don't. I think I might be a majority with that. I might be. I don't know. But all I can tell you is when there is a strike, what I have learned from my experience is when there is a strike, I don't think it serves anyone. It really doesn't,
No.
because it just brings the town to a dead stop.
Right.
And it affects everything, because this town, I believe this town runs on show business.
Right.
I mean, it affects restaurants, car washes. It affects everything.
That's where we're going. We're going to a lot of restaurants, a lot of car washes too in this film, just
Okay.
because everybody is closing down. You know,
Yeah.
the job when you first got here. What did you have to work when you first got out to LA, or did
No,
you,
when I came
you
to
were
LA,
working?
I was fortunate enough where I made my living only in show business,
awesome.
and I did well enough to where, knock wood, I did well enough to where I didn't have to have a job.
Well, now that you're out here, now that you've lived the LA experience, now that you moved to Hollywood from New York, left your family, do you wish you never did come out here? Do you wish you would have stayed in New York?
No, no, not at all. No, I'm glad that I came out, and I look at everything like it's, whether it was a good or a bad experience, it's a life experience, and you either learn what to do or you learn what never to do again. And so, no, I've had a good time. I've had a really good time here, and there have been bad days certainly, but the good times definitely outweighed the bad in show business.
That's great.
Because I worked a lot. I was very, very fortunate.
Residual check still coming in. Still got to be the beast.
Yeah,
Keeping it alive.
I'm alive. I'm
That's
here
good.
and I'm alive, and my life has changed quite a bit. I'm not married any longer, but it's interesting.
So, can you tell us like where you see yourself right now, and maybe the business now, and then maybe in 5 to 10 years, where you see it headed?
Where I am right now is, I have not worked much. The last time I worked was for Robert Zemeckis, probably about a year ago, and I worked for him down his motion capture stage down on Jefferson, and I worked for him for a couple of weeks, and it was a great time. I worked with Bob before. He's a wonderful guy. He put me in Castaway, and I'd done an episode of Tales from the Crypt with him years ago with Kirk Douglas. It's a classic episode called Yellow, and so where do I see the business going? I don't know where I see the business going. I know I'd like to work again.
Right.
I'd like to, right now I have a little construction company that keeps me very busy and keeps money rolling in, and that's going very well. So, I'm taken care of, but I'd really like to I'd like to get back into it. I'd like to get back into scripted television again and do what I can.
Do you think if they called you today and said, "Hey Jay, I got a role for you, but you got to move to Canada," would you do it?
As sad as it sounds, yes, I probably would. See, here's the thing. I'm an actor, and what I really enjoy is the craft of acting. I really enjoy getting out on a stage or getting in front of a motion picture camera or a television camera with other players and playing and acting and finding and discovering things and creating.
Yep.
I just don't like all the bullshit in between. I don't like all the the managers and the lawyers and the agents and all the politics. That's not anything I ever enjoyed. I just enjoy the craft of acting. So to answer your question, yeah, I'd move to Canada. I'd move anywhere to do my craft again.
Back to work.
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully this will bring something back for you, man.
I hope so, man. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Appreciate it.
Peace.
All right.
Okay.
Cool. Very good.